discover how to generate holistic healing for your mental health with a 6-dimension approach in today's episode with Cina Hoey. Cina Hoey is a holistic therapist and transformation coach and licensed psychotherapist. So, Cina, please tell us, how can entrepreneurs generate holistic healing for their mental health? Heal Podcast with Lily Patrascu shares longevity and anti-aging techniques to stay young forever, increase energy, overcome addiction, and live your longest, best life ever, shared by world's most innovative, alternative, and traditional health thought leaders, healers, and doctors. Discover quantum healing strategies to heal your mind, body, and soul.
So, holistic healing for your mental health means that you address more than one dimension. So my approach is one that incorporates both the mind and body as well as the spirit, and then also across the dimensions of the past, the present, and the future. So it's not just, I don't offer services where you just go to therapy and you talk about your problems. It's a bit more in depth than that. And I'm happy to go into any of those dimensions further if you want me to.
Tell us, what is the blueprint for an entrepreneur to generate holistic healing with the 6-dimension approach? Like, what is the first, second, and so on steps to achieve that?
Sure. And do you want me to focus on entrepreneurs specifically, or just imagine that an entrepreneur is my client?
Yes.
Okay. So, as far as the dimension of the mind means that we really have to recalibrate our thoughts and the way that we think and the way that we even respond to our thinking mind. And so in the dimension of the mind, we learn a lot of techniques about how to reframe our thoughts, challenge our thoughts, and really on a very fundamental level, like how to notice when you have negative thoughts. So if a client is coming to me and they have negative thoughts about their body, one of the interventions is just going to be raising awareness of how often are you thinking about that? What are your thoughts around that? What are the critical things that you're saying to yourself throughout the day, not just in session with me, but so really raising a lot of self-awareness and then being able to be curious about it and being able to reframe it, change it, and take advantage of the benefits of neuroplasticity, which means that the brain can change. We can build new neural connections anytime we want. So anytime you think a thought, you essentially strengthen the pattern that already exists in your brain that it goes along with that thought. So when you think a new thought, you think it again and again and again, you can change your brain and that becomes more automatic for you. So a lot of reprogramming and even investigating the dimension of the subconscious mind, because that's where most of our thoughts and beliefs live, and then challenging those, and then really doing the work to change whatever's in the subconscious. So that's the dimension of the mind. As far as the body, I think the body is often neglected in psychotherapy. We think it's so much about the mind and we focus on just our thoughts. And so the holistic approach is to bring the body online as well, to navigate the central nervous system, to understand what it means to regulate the nervous system, and to really honor the physical body and its needs. I think also most of the people, and especially for any entrepreneurs listening, they're very high functioning. Most of my clients are high functioning, high achieving individuals. And what they've learned to do over time is essentially disconnect and dissociate from the body's cues. They can work in meetings all day without going to the bathroom. They forget to eat lunch. So they're very dissociated and disconnected. So there's a lot of reattunement and body attunement, body awareness in the holistic approach. As far as the soul and the spiritual aspect of the holistic approach is very different for every client. I'm not going to force any spiritual beliefs on anybody that doesn't want them, but we explore essentially what it means to be your authentic self and what a divine connection means for you. And really that's very unique to every person, but mostly we focus in on authenticity there. Who are you when you're not in your trauma responses? Who are you when you're not being a perfectionist? Who are you when you're not afraid of being rejected or being abandoned or being unsafe in some way? So we try and reconnect there. And that's really more of that spiritual dimension. There's also some energy healing that can be incorporated there. And depending on the person's spiritual beliefs, we can also incorporate angels and past lives and all sorts of fun stuff. As far as the past, present, and future, I like to address all of those dimensions because they're all an integral part of the healing process. And I think that traditional psychotherapy focuses very much on the past and also some on the present. But healing the past means that we do a lot of that clinical trauma work. We do a lot of that classic psychotherapy. What happened to you? What did you start to believe about yourself at the time? I use a lot of internal family systems to do that work, inner child work, shadow work. So it's really like cleaning out the wounds is the way that I see that. And I think that's where traditional therapy focuses the most. As far as the dimension of the present moment, we focus on mindfulness a lot about what it means to really be in the present moment, and not just in the present moment and I don't know, follow your breath. Like that's like the main instructions for mindfulness. But I studied mindfulness extensively for over 2 years. I've been on silent meditations with monks. I've really, really took the deep dive into mindfulness, and what it means is really changing your relationship to the present moment, no matter what it brings. And so my clients learn what it means to be present without judgment, to be present without resistance, to be present and accepting of the moment as it is without feeling like you have to fix it or change it all the time, which is exhausting and creates 90% of our problems, honestly. And then the future is the really fun stuff. Once we've cleaned out the wounds and we've learned how to relate to the present moment, how to tolerate our own emotions without fixing them and changing them, then we get into manifestation and building this version of you that is like the highest self. We use the law of attraction and manifesting techniques and metaphysics and all of that fun stuff to really create. You know, we're all very powerful, conscious creators, and sometimes we forget that. So that's everything. Sorry, I know that was a lot.
Thank you. Let's take a practical example. What kind of mental health conditions are we talking about? And let's go through how would that look, like in terms of what kind of habits or what kind of therapy would someone need to take in order to kind of help themselves to heal holistically?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the issues that I work a lot with is individuals with binge eating disorder. And binge eating is basically just a loss of control around food. There's a lot of body image issues that are involved in that. And so across the 6 dimensions, it looks like, what are my beliefs that are driving this behavior? What is my relationship with my physical body, and how can I regulate my nervous system? So it's I can give you like an example in each dimension. So let's say in the dimension of the mind, if you want to heal it doesn't have to be binge eating. It could be any negative habit. So whoever's listening, plug in your negative habit. It could be scrolling too much on your cell phone. It could be that you lash out at your partner too much, or that you isolate yourself, or you're watching too much TV, playing too many video games, smoking, drinking, vaping, anything. So in this instance, we'll use binge eating. So in the dimension of the mind, that looks like examining your beliefs around your body and around food. And so one of the techniques that I teach my clients is to write down all your new beliefs. Like, your beliefs turn into your actions. So most of the clients that have bad habits around food will have negative beliefs about their body. So they'll say something like, oh, my body's not good enough as it is, and I'm always binge eating, I lose control, I have no willpower. And so we just delete all those beliefs. And so one of the exercises I do with them is coming up with like a transformation statement. And so I tell them to write down all their new beliefs and then read them every single day. So the new beliefs might be something like, I am at peace with food, and I accept my body as it is, and I can be around any food at any time and still maintain my self-control. And then you read that on a daily basis, and that's what helps. That repetition is something that helps the reprogramming to take place. That repetition is really important for neuroplasticity. In the intervention of the body, we'll teach body awareness. A body scan meditation is essential for anyone that has trouble with emotion regulation or bad habits. You're on autopilot. You are essentially just acting out of a very memorized set of habitual behaviors all the time. If you just grab a vape pen without thinking about it, if you just grab a cupcake without thinking about it, that body awareness is going to teach you when your body gets tight, or when you start to clench, and when you are about to go into your maladaptive habits. So I would say a body scan meditation is great, or even something like diaphragmatic breathing helps regulate the nervous system. You start to get tense, what's the first thing you do? You reach for the food. Okay, well, instead, why don't we breathe 10 times, and then we'll see how you feel after. So diaphragmatic breathing or a body scan are two interventions that I teach in the dimension of the body. As far as the spirit, an exercise I love to do with clients is a values check. Like, you are away from your authenticity in some way, let's get back to it. Let's remember who you are when you're not playing a role. And so you start to examine the ways. One of the exercises that I'll give to people is, in your entire life, what do you most want to do? What do you most want to be? And what do you most want to have? And when you answer those 3 questions and you list 5 to 10 things in each area, you get clear on the stuff that's not just like this nitty-gritty day-to-day like survival mode, but like, these are my values. This is who I am. This is what I most want for my whole life. Another good way to check your values is to think about the people that you admire. And what do you admire about them? What do you like about them? Those are part of your value system. If you really value someone who is kind, or who is generous, or who is very driven and successful, like, then that's what's part of your value system. And then you ask yourself, okay, how do I bring more of that into my life? And when you're living according to your values, you're happier. It's like one of the secrets to happiness, like, live according to your values. If you're depressed, you're not living according to your values. So that's an intervention for that. As far as the past, one of the top interventions I'll use with clients is inner child work. If you have an issue, if you have anxiety, if you have depression, if you have panic attacks, if you are binge eating, if you have an addiction of some kind, your inner child and your subconscious and the beliefs and the behaviors that are happening on autopilot are usually not really that much about you in the present moment. Is usually about some memorized set of responses and some conditioned pattern that developed a long time ago. And so inner child work really means making contact with your inner child, just kind of letting them tell their story and understanding what beliefs they developed at the time, and importantly too, what parts of themselves they shut down during those incidents, and then calling those back, and then soothing the inner child and learning how to soothe that part of yourself rather than acting on autopilot. As far as the present moment, I would say a self check-in is a technique that I teach clients all the time, which is that you just take a moment, and we could do it together, Lily, if you want to. It's just, what am I feeling right now in my body? And you just do a quick check-in with the physical body. What am I thinking right now? What kind of thoughts am I having in this moment? And then what kind of emotions do I feel? And that's it. You just do that multiple times a day, and your self-awareness will skyrocket, because so often we're so busy, right? We have jobs, we have kids, we have lives, we have partners, we have interests, we have hobbies, we have busy schedules. So just doing that self-check-in throughout the day raises your self-awareness so that you're not on autopilot anymore, and you have choice before you reach for the cupcake, before you reach for the vape pen, before you say something that you don't mean, or get into an argument with your boss. So you pause and you just check in with yourself at multiple times throughout the day. One of the easiest ways to remember to do this is to leave a post-it note where you see it multiple times a day, or you set an alarm on your phone. As far as the future, one of the most fun things that I do with clients and with, let's say, a binge eater, is imagining a future version of yourself that has already solved the problem. So the binge eater who's already solved her problem, how does she think? How does she talk? How does she spend her free time? How does she relate to other people? How does she speak to herself? How does she dress? How does she walk? How does she exercise? And you imagine and visualize that version of yourself as if she's already here and she's already real and true. And again, that you can plug in any problem for that. The version of you that's not depressed, the version of you that doesn't have panic attacks, or the version of you that isn't experiencing addiction. And you visualize that, and you hold that vision every day, and you feel as if you're already that person, and you do your best to align your actions and decisions with that of that person.
That was very interesting, actually, to look at so many different dimensions for solving one thing. Uh,
Sure.
how can someone heal their disappointment and depression? Because you talked about binge eating, and I know a lot of the steps that you talked about binge eating also apply to depression and some other things. But
Yeah.
is it possible for you to go through how you would go about healing disappointment and depression? And the reason I'm asking you, it's a personal thing where I suffered some client disappointments, and I still haven't been able to overcome them. Like I'm still, held back by that.
Holding on. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm happy to speak about that. So I think disappointment is a feeling that every person can relate to. Every one of us has been disappointed. Every one of us has been hurt. Every one of us has been rejected or abandoned. We've all felt disappointment in some way. It's not the most enjoyable feeling. But I think the first step there would be honoring whatever that feeling is in its fullness and in its entirety without trying to fix or change it. Like you feel disappointed. So this is part of this emotion regulation that's built into the sixth dimensional approach, and the ability to be with what you feel without needing to change it and without resisting it. And a huge piece that I don't know how I haven't even mentioned it already is self-compassion. A huge piece of my approach is self-compassion, and that weaves its way honestly throughout every dimension, but especially that of the past or something that has already happened, or that of the future when we're struggling and suffering in the present moment. And so if you're feeling that feeling of disappointment, recognize that that's a valid feeling to have. And you can practice accepting that feeling and not resisting it or feeling like you want to make it go away. And it sounds like also we would probably travel into the dimension of the mind a little bit where you're looping on what happened. I can't believe she did that. I can't believe he didn't show up for that. I can't believe they backed out on that. How could they? So there's now we bring in the mindfulness piece of like the judgments that you have about either yourself or other people and the way everybody acted and behaved in this scenario, and even judging your own feeling. Like you want this feeling of depression or sadness or disappointment to go away, but that's not really how feelings work. They come up, we accept them, we feel them, we give ourselves compassion for that experience, and then we kind of allow that wave to crash. And if it comes back, we do the same thing. Oh, I'm feeling this again. That's okay. Like, no problem. So there's the emotion regulation there that's all rooted in mindfulness. And also the ability to notice your thinking mind and notice the judgments that you're having, and to say, this isn't really helpful thinking for me. How do I want to think about this instead? What did I learn from this? How can I let this go? Like, I'm working to let this go. So changing your thoughts around it is important, and noticing and having enough self-awareness to know when you are in that looping, like obsessive kind of thought pattern that we can all relate to. And then also being really compassionate with the fact that you got hurt and that's crappy, but that it's okay and you can handle it, and you're going to continuously nurture yourself until you can move forward. And then the dimension of the future might come in about like, how do I want to feel about this? Like, what does the healed version of me look like around this? Does she still think about this? Has she taken some sort of action to correct something? Has she written an email? Has she written like, what did she do and how did she get over this? And so that's, without knowing too many of the details, it's just like little bits and pieces of the approach will come in handy. But especially that self-compassion piece, like we've all been hurt, ride the wave, it's going to be okay. But try not to let it influence your decisions moving forward. And I think that's a key element as well, that we can say, like, this happened. I have, I care about the pain that I'm experiencing, and also what's going to happen to me if I let this fester. And is it worth it for me to hold on to this anger? Or am I just kind of giving this situation and these people more power than they deserve? Like, what's the present moment is my point of power. What do I want from here? Who do I get to become from here? How do I grow from this rather than let this drag me down?
Thank you. How do you move on from that in terms of like not allowing your disappointment, your depression, and betrayal, anger? How do you not allow that to affect your future actions. Because what I find is that I'm still, yes, I mean, I still haven't recovered in the sense that I still haven't been able to take certain steps because I'm thinking about, being disappointed when I do, like when I'm thinking about doing event collaborations that I used to do frequently before, holding myself back now. I'm thinking twice. Instead of like making introductions that I would have made in a split second, I'm
Sure.
taking sometimes months to do it,
So
So
what are you afraid of?
very big way in the sense of keeping me almost like stuck. What would you have me do to kind of come out of the stuck mode and be again in action and, free?
Sure. Yeah. When you go to take that action, when you think about reconnecting with someone or planning an event or whatever, what is the thought that comes up for you?
It's disappointment, it's betrayal, it's fear. I would say fear is the most predominant one. Fear of disappointment, fear of betrayal, and fear of loss as well.
Okay. And so those are all emotions. So the thoughts are probably something like, if I take this risk, someone could disappoint me again.
Yes.
Okay. So what do you end up doing? You end up just taking no action at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So where does that leave you if we were to fast forward into a year from now? What happens to you, the way that you feel about yourself, your business, if you don't take any actions and if you stop taking risks because you're afraid of that disappointment again?
It would look very bleak.
Yeah.
Broke and, not leveraging all these, thousands of opportunities that I'm getting.
For sure. You are a very dynamic person. You have a lot of things going on and you're capable of so much. And so what would your authentic self say about moving forward? What does she have to say about taking those risks? Is she afraid?
I think so.
I don't think so. I think your authentic self is powerful. And I think she has a big vision for herself. I've seen all of your channels, all of your podcasts, all of your brands. Like, you are a very dynamic and powerful and creative person. And if you stifle that, you're not going to be happy in a year from now. And so the thing that's scary is that you have to do the thing even though you're afraid. You have to be willing to tolerate the distress of the discomfort of like, I'm scared, and you have to do it anyway. We always, like, there's only growth on the other side of taking that risk. So if we stay in our comfort zone, we let the people of the past, by the way, hold that power over us. And so the invitation here really is to dig deep into those parts of yourself that desire that expansion. And it sounds like you are that. That's my perception of you anyway. Like, you seem so creative and so powerful. So if you stifle that, you're not going to be happy with yourself. So really what that means is, okay, what is the future version of, what do I want the future to look like? And then let's work backwards. So you want the future to look like you have these great connections and you've taken advantage of the opportunities that come your way, right? And so if we were to backtrack, what kind of thoughts do you need to think in order to create that reality? Because they're not, oh no, what if somebody disappoints me? Because if we follow the bouncing ball of that leads you to, like you said before, like, you're going to be upset with yourself. So what kind of thoughts do you need to think in order to get yourself to that place of taking action?
That I trust myself and my intuition. And maybe occasionally I will make mistakes because that's how it has to be, so that I can grow.
Yes.
And that will happen for me and not against me. But
Amen. So I would write that all down and I would read it every single day. And I would envision the version of myself in a year from now who has overcome this and who's resilient to those disappointments. Because I'm sure you've already experienced this in business and in your life, that every time you level yourself up a little bit, there's more resistance. And there's always some sort of fear to work through when we want to move forward. So healing that wound often means having a lot of compassion for the way that we're feeling now and a lot of courage to move forward again. The majority of my clients don't relate this to business. They relate this to past relationships. So many people that show up in therapy have either been hurt by their family of origin and their parents, or they've been hurt by a previous partner and they're afraid to get in relationships again. And so they settle for less than they deserve, or they avoid them completely. And the invitation is always like, okay, let's understand how much we've been hurt and let's honor that. And then how do we move forward, and how do we just do the thing even though we're scared?
Thank you. That sounds very interesting. And I do tell us what kind of habits would someone have in order to work on themselves with a holistic healing approach so that they can start to heal themselves gradually?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so many, right? Like even before I offered like 6 different interventions in every dimension possible. But I would say that mindfulness and meditation are really the foundation of personal transformation. So that building that habit of, even if it's just a few minutes a day of checking in with yourself in some way, even if it's not 30 minutes of formal meditation practice, it doesn't have to be that. It could be 10 minutes where you just write in a journal and kind of reflect on the day. It could be 10 minutes in the morning when you're saying like, what kind of day do I want to have today? So some kind of intentional practice where you do it at the same time and it becomes just part of your routine. I would say mindfulness, meditation, visualization, all 3 of those are really, really good foundations if you're looking to change and transform. And then I also have to add into the self-compassion piece, learning to be kind to yourself during moments of intensity will build the relationship you have with yourself. The relationship you have with yourself influences every part of your life. It influences your finances. It influences whether or not you take those risks. It influences the relationships you have with other people and romantic partners. So that self-compassion piece, I think, is extremely transformative. Like if I could say like just my top 3 practices, it would be self-compassion, meditation, and what else has really changed my life? And probably that visualizing like that future version of myself, not necessarily like visualizing the sports car you want, but like visualizing the version of yourself that could buy a sports car.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you to find out more information about holistic healing.
Sure. My website is www.cinahoey.com. I'm on Instagram at Cina_therapy. I'm on YouTube also at that same, at Cina_therapy. I want to mention too for your listeners that I have a completely free stress reduction course. There's like 80 videos. There's a bunch of meditations because I really value giving people these tools. And it's totally free and it's on my YouTube channel. So go check it out if you feel like stress or anxiety has become a part of your life and you don't want it to be.
Thank you. Follow me for more interviews with world's most innovative health change makers to live your healthiest life ever.